Welcome back to the Adam Schefter podcast as we get ready to head into week 14 of the NFL season. And I know we've had some great slates this season, but there might not be a weekend in which we've had better slates than this one. And to help us get ready for a tremendous week 14 slate, we bring in my friend, my colleague, the host of the Pat McAfee Show, Ty Schmit, for the Thursday edition of the weekly Six-Pack.
Thank you very much, Schefty. Good as always to be joining you. And I think you're right. I think this is the best slate of the year thus far. But as we're kind of looking at this and going forward with how tight a lot of these division races are and how there's really no team, that's kind of running away with the play. Like, I have a feeling that we're going to be saying this might be the best slate of the season for the next several weeks just because so many games, the stakes are so high.
And so much is undecided, and so many divisions are in question, and there's so many still divisional meetings that are going to occur starting this weekend. So, yeah, you may be right about that. And I know we're not going to mention it as one of our top 6 items, but there's a Lions-Cowboys game on Thursday night that isn't even good enough to qualify for the 6 items and topics that we're going to be discussing today. And the Thursday night game between the Lions and Cowboys should be a great matchup.
Without a doubt. You could argue it's a de facto playoff game. So, yeah, the fact that that isn't in the top 6 is pretty crazy. But let's get right into the top 6, and that's what we're going to do today. We're just going to preview the 6 best games of the weekend, starting with topic number 1, Bears at Packers. Boy, I'll tell you what, Schefty, in my opinion, as a Packers fan, we were just talking about this, before we started here. I think this is the most important Packers-Bears game in at least 12 years, going back to 2013, week 17. It was a win-get-in scenario for both teams. The Packers beat the Bears on not really a last-second touchdown, but Rodgers on 4th down to Randall Cobb to get them into the playoffs. What are you expecting out of this one this weekend?
I'm going to go you one further and prove to you how significant this matchup actually is. And this factoid comes courtesy of our ace researcher, Jacob Nerob, who helps us with some notes for Sunday NFL Countdown, with stats, with X's and O's matchup type of material. But Jacob has pointed out that this matchup here between the Packers and the Bears, it is the 211th meeting between these two sides. This will be essentially the spot. They're a combined 17-6-1 this season. It's the latest in the season that these two teams, who have played 211 times, this will be the 211th meeting, the latest in the season that they've met where both teams have a winning record of 700% or higher. So they're rolling along here. There's never been a time ever in the history of this rivalry since 1932 where these two teams have both had great winning percentages, meaning this late in the season, and they're going to play twice in the next 3 weeks, and will be in Chicago on Saturday night in week 16. So 2 times in 3 weeks, the Packers and Bears are playing. The Bears are the current number 1 seed in the NFC. The Packers are having their own tremendous season. And in the 211 times that these two teams have played, they've never met this late with such winning records.
That's remarkable. I would have never guessed that. You date back to, the Bears in their heyday or the Packers in the 60s. You would have assumed that maybe we would have a game that had either this high of stakes or a little bit of higher stakes this late in the season, but it just speaks volumes to what Ben Johnson has been able to do with the Bears. Again, we talked about this on Tuesday. If you would have told Bears fans going into this game against the Packers that they would not only be leading the NFC North, but have the number 1 seed currently in the NFC, they would have told you we were living in bizarro world. So I don't know. I'm so excited for this game. And in years past, I would say home or away, doesn't matter at all. The Packers are going to go in there and kick the Bears' ass, which is largely what they did the entire time Aaron Rodgers was the quarterback. But for this game in particular, I think it's a massive advantage that the Packers are playing at home at Lambeau.
Well, Matt LaFleur has an 11-1 record as the head coach of the Packers against the Chicago Bears. 11-1. And yet, what was the very first thing, the first message that Ben Johnson delivered on the day that he held his first press conference as the Chicago Bears head coach? Do you remember this quote right here, Ty?
I know this is the toughest division of football right now. There's 3 teams that made the playoffs this year. I've got tremendous amount of respect for the coaches and the players in this league. Having competed against them for the last 6 years. Dan Campbell, Kevin O'Connell, you're talking about 2 guys that are up for Coach of the Year awards as the season ends here. And to be quite frank with you, I kind of enjoyed beating Matt LaFleur twice a year.
I certainly do remember that. And I remember, I don't want to say being pissed off, but just kind of chuckling and being like, yeah, okay, let's see. I've heard, how many Bears coaches have I heard this? You know, that's one of the things they always talk about when a new Bears coach comes in, whether it's from the ownership or whoever, it's, hey, you know, make the playoffs, you know, have a winning record, all that kind of stuff, got to beat the Packers. You never really hear that from the Packers side because they've done it so routinely. But for Ben Johnson to make a statement like that way before the season, way before we knew what was potentially going to happen, and then for now them to be in this spot, it adds a little bit more of a spotlight. It turns up the heat and you know, the magnitude of this game a little bit more than what is already the best game of the weekend.
Yeah, I mean, I remember when Ben Johnson said that, I was like, whoa, you come in there on the last place Bears, a team that hasn't beaten Green Bay very much, and I know you had great success against the Green Bay Packers when you were the offensive coordinator of the Detroit Lions, but now you're the head coach of the Bears, and the Bears haven't fared particularly well lately against the Green Bay Packers, and he didn't care. And you know what? He just keeps saying whatever he wants to say and doing whatever he wants to do, and right now, Ben Johnson feels like he's having the type of impact on that team right now that Mike Ditka made when he first got there as the Chicago Bears head coach. That's how it feels right now. Now, Mike Ditka went on to have a legendary career and become the coach of the Bears and imitated on Saturday Night Live skits and a hero, a folk hero. And by the way, to this day, and I know some people might argue, but you have to believe me on this, Mike Ditka might be the only sports figure who is as popular in Chicago as Michael Jordan. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Ben Johnson right now is off to a historic start in Chicago, and he can do no wrong there right now. And let's see if he can keep that going for the rest of the season and how much more he can build upon that reputation and legacy so far.
And to your point, whatever happens on Sunday, look how young the Bears are at so many key positions. Like they're not, I mean, barring crazy circumstances that we wouldn't be able to account for right now, like the Bears are going to be around. They are going to be a player in the NFC and the NFL as a whole for years to come. So I'm curious though, Schefter, what do you think this game comes down to?
Turnovers, because the Bears have gotten them all year long, and that's been the difference in why they've been able to become the number 1 seed. If they can get Jordan Love to throw some picks, Bears are going to win the game.
Okay. So yeah, that is the marquee game of the weekend in the late slot with Tom Brady and Kevin Burkhardt on the call. Very excited for that one and for the ramifications of what that will do to the seeding and the playoffs and the divisional races, all that kind of stuff. Let's move on to the number 2 game of the weekend, Schefty. Texans at Chiefs. I remember last year, I want to say it was before Ohio State. We were in Columbus for Ohio State, Tennessee in the first round of the playoffs, and I believe that was when the Texans and Chiefs played last year. Tank Dell got hurt, and that was kind of the end of the Texans season, and the Chiefs really started to ascend. Going into this game, it feels completely different. It feels like the Texans are kind of that team that nobody wants to play right now, and the Chiefs are, it's the playoffs for them. So how do you see this one shaking out?
Well, the Chiefs have struggled in close games this year, which has been very odd. And the Texans' defense, I think, has been one of the 2 or 3 best defenses in the NFL. And what I think is very interesting is the Chiefs placed their left tackle, Josh Simmons, on IR this week. They have their guard, Trey Smith, who has a ankle sprain, and they don't know whether he's going to play. And they have their other tackle, Juwan Taylor, who they don't know whether he's going to be up. So if you take 3 starters off the Chiefs' offensive line against what might be the best defense in the league, watch out. Now, I also know, as people in Houston have told me, that the Texans have been looking forward to this game all season long. However, the Chiefs are in a spot where they almost have to win here because it's getting late in the season for them. They keep losing close games, and they have to find a way to prevail. It's a playoff rematch. It's in Arrowhead. It's on Sunday night. It's not supposed to be brutally cold the way that it could have been. C.J. Stroud came back last week and has played better. The Texans' offensive line is vastly improved. I know there's a question mark about Woody Marks, the Texans running back. My understanding is he should be fine to play on Sunday night, which is big for the Texans because they've been into establishing the ground game. So there's a lot of element. I think this Texans team is dangerous. And we know if the Chiefs get to the playoffs somehow, they're going to be dangerous. So it's 2 really strong AFC teams, and one of them may not be able to make it to the postseason, and that could come down to what happens on Sunday night.
Yeah, I agree. I think if you're the Texans, if they are to win this game, then you really start setting your eyes on the division. And it's like, okay, hey, listen, not only do we have C.J. Stroud back, and there were shreds of, this is the C.J. Stroud from his rookie year. This is the guy that we thought would be able to completely revitalize our franchise. And with the Chiefs, I don't know. I don't know if it's one of those things where we talk about this all the time with the close games. Some years the ball just doesn't bounce your way.
Right.
It doesn't matter what you do. Last year they were 5-0 in 1-score games, or single digit games, or however you want to phrase it. And this year, for whatever reason, they haven't been able to find a way to close those games out and win them. In your opinion, if the Chiefs do lose this game, is that officially going to be when we can, kind of call for their demise, or are you still pumping the brakes on that?
I'm still pumping the brakes until they're eliminated. But again, let's just go and point out the facts. Since week 9, Kansas City is 1-3. And usually when we get to this time of the year, the good teams are figuring out a way to put it into overdrive and win games. Since week 9, they're 1-3. Since week 9, Houston is 4-1. Houston has figured out how to get it done. Houston has leaned on its defense. Houston has made the plays to win games. The Chiefs have not. They're on the ropes. The Texans have a chance to deliver a powerful blow to knock them out. Let's see if they could do it on Sunday night.
Yeah, and, you look at who they have remaining. They still have, the Chargers and the Broncos in the division, albeit at home, but still, it's winning time. You can't afford to lose this game on Sunday, but with how tight things are in the AFC, I don't know if the Texans can necessarily afford to lose this game either, especially with how much momentum they have going into this. So what a great game to end Sunday with. We'll be very excited for that one. Let's move on to the third best game of the weekend, Schefty. Steelers-Ravens. And boy, this is, I don't know where you want to start with this one, but you have 2 teams that are just limping into this. Both look like they're going in the wrong direction, but the winner of this game is going to be in the driver's seat in the AFC North. So what do you think about this game?
We talked about the history between the Packers and the Bears, the 211th meeting between those 2 teams. How about this little factoid? This is the 39th meeting between Mike Tomlin's Steelers and John Harbaugh's Ravens. The only 2 head coaches who have ever squared off more with their respective teams were Curly Lambeau for the Packers and George Halas for the Bears, and they squared off 49 times. So if Harbaugh and Tomlin can survive 5 more years in their respective cities, they could break the all-time record that Curly Lambeau and George Halasset with the Bears and Packers that we previously have talked about in this very podcast. And both teams under a lot of pressure. People wondering if Mike Tomlin should continue on in Pittsburgh. People questioning if the Ravens are a stale organization at this point in time. What's amazing is I had somebody this week say that the word they used to describe the Steelers was reeling. They feel like the Steelers are reeling. I don't know that they're reeling, but they're certainly not playing at the level they were. But here's the amazing part. If the Steelers somehow can find a way to win on Sunday in Baltimore, they're in first place, and they have essentially a 2-game lead because they will have beaten the Baltimore Ravens. Now, I know the Cincinnati Bengals are still alive, and Joe Burrow's back, and they're going to have something to say here before this is over. But if Pittsburgh wins Sunday, for all the noise that there's been about Mike Tomlin, they're still in first place. And you know what? As I was walking into the studio, we taped this in New York City, in the ABC ESPN offices. I saw the great host of Unsportsmanlike Radio, Evan Cohen, and we were talking about Mike Tomlin. And he says, to all these Steelers fans who are calling for the job of Mike Tomlin, here's what I want to know. Who do you want to replace him? Who's going to be out there right now who's better and more effective than Mike Tomlin? If the Steelers made that move at the end of the season, where are they turning to, Ty?
I know Diggs, for one, has been very vocal about maybe a guy like Jeff Hafley. He doesn't know, I think it's fool's gold and it's a pipe dream, but he was saying, hey, maybe Minnesota decides that Kevin O'Connell mishandled, the situation.
No way. They just signed him to an extension.
Well, I know. And he was just throwing that out there. But I think to play devil's advocate, Steelers fans would say, yeah, but that's the problem, is if they win this game and they go back to the playoffs, what are they going to be, 9-8? So it's going to be the same story it has been. Pittsburgh, whether you like it or not, it is one of those cities like Green Bay or some of these stalwart franchises where making it to the playoffs is not good enough. They haven't won a playoff game in, 9 years? So you talk about things getting stale. I think that is widely known. If Mike Tomlin, he's not going to get fired, but if Mike Tomlin and the Steelers decide to part ways, he will get a job the next day, wherever he wants to go, if he wants that. But, boy, I tell you what, it's just, you look at the Steelers, and I think at this point in the season, we know you are who you are. There's not really adjustments you can make in 6 days. And I understand the Ravens haven't been great, but do you feel right now that the Steelers are going to be able to stymie and just completely stop Derrick Henry? I mean, they just get, and I feel like that's what it comes down to.
I don't have great faith in Pittsburgh winning this division. I have more confidence in Baltimore, which is struggling some. I even have more confidence right now in Cincinnati because Joe Burrow is back. But, again, if Pittsburgh wins, the noise gets quieter. And I know there's been a lot of noise, but the noise seems to be coming from outside more than it does inside. I don't hear within the organization.
I agree.
Let's move on from Mike Tomlin. Is Mike Tomlin on the road? It's crazy how much noise there actually is relative to what's being said, I think, within the organization, which is not very much right now.
And that would make sense because, like you've said, like a lot of people have said, no matter what, he's not getting fired. They're not going to come out and fire Mike Tomlin. If anything, it would be after the season. They would meet and mutually agree, hey, maybe it is time for me to have a fresh start. You guys, because like you said, I mean, it doesn't matter how good you are at a certain point. That message can go stale when you've been there so long, but it's a rivalry game. We've seen, I feel like the Steelers they haven't been lately, but they can be bipolar. And I could see them coming out this weekend and playing their best game of the year and winning. I don't think that would shock me, especially with the way Lamar Jackson still doesn't really look 100% right. I don't know what it is. I don't know if he's still a little banged up, but so yeah, the stakes in this game are insanely high with two fan bases who are not happy, and probably won't be happy even if they win on Sunday. All right, Schefter, let's move on to the fourth biggest game of the weekend. Colts at Jags. We talked about this a little bit on Tuesday. The Colts have not fared well down in Jacksonville for several years now, going on almost a decade, maybe a little bit longer. And then the Jags, like we said, no one talks about them. You don't hear them. You don't really see them on any shows. There's really no discourse around them. And quietly, They are in first place in the AFC South in Liam Cohen's first season. What do you think about this game? This is obviously a massive, massive game for the future of this division.
2 8-4 teams battling it out for first place in the AFC South. The Jaguars are 4-1 in their last 5 games. The Colts have lost their last 2 games. And in the process of losing those 2 games, they haven't looked the same. Now, maybe that coincides with the hairline fracture in Daniel Jones' fibula. Maybe it coincides with him not being able to move laterally as much and them not being able to call the same exact offense. Now they lose Sauce Gardner, who they traded for double first-round draft picks. He was the guy that was going to be a difference maker for their defense. He's now out multiple weeks, though they're not going to place him on injured reserve. So that tells you he'll probably miss 2, 3, 4 weeks here with that calf injury. Fortunately, not the Achilles. Boy, it would be a huge statement for the Colts to go into a place that they've never played well, that they don't win, and find a way to beat a team that's really rolling along here. The Jacksonville Jaguars, despite the fact that they lost Travis Hunter to a season-ending injury, despite the fact that Brian Thomas Jr. was sidelined there with a high ankle sprain, they've come back and they've played very well. And yes, as we discussed and mentioned Monday, and as you just alluded to, nobody's talking about the Jaguars. What does it take for people to talk about an 8-4 team in first place in its division with a rookie head coach, with a rookie GM? Like, it's amazing. If they beat the Colts and go to 9-4, I think people have to start talking a little bit more about the Jaguars, but it's a chance for the Colts to stop the bleeding, for Daniel Jones to get back on track, to feed Jonathan Taylor, to get it going that way. But another great divisional matchup with huge playoff ramifications.
Yeah, and, like you said about Daniel Jones' leg, I don't know if it's really made them one-dimensional. I think that would be quite the overstatement, but teams can key in on Jonathan Taylor a lot more now because the threat of Daniel Jones tucking and running isn't really there anymore, which we saw, him make plays with his legs early on in the season when they were really rolling. Jags have a very stout run D as well, so we'll see there. But to your point about no one talking about the Jags, honestly, I don't know if a win over the Colts.
And we'll change that.
Yeah, and I don't know what it is. And then they have the Jets the following week, which is kind of a throwaway. They go to Denver on the 21st. If they were somehow to win that game, I think that's when we would really kind of get the groundswell of, wow, this Jags team is for real. And is that fair? No. You shouldn't have to go on the road as a division leader potentially at that point and beat one of the top 2 seeds in the AFC. But for whatever reason, and you know what? I think it's been good for the Jags too. Not a whole lot of fanfare, not a lot of, there's not a big circus around them. So they can quietly kind of just put their heads down and do what they need to do. And I don't know I'm sure they'd be one of those teams if they were to make the playoffs that everyone would pick against them in the first round. That's kind of just the recency bias of how the Jags have been the last several years. But like you said, I don't think teams in the NFL view them the same way. The Colts know exactly what to expect when they go into Jacksonville on Sunday.
Well, it should be another great matchup on Sunday that we'll look forward to.
Yep, without a doubt. And again, whoever wins that will definitely be in the driver's seat in the AFC South. All right, Schefty, let's go to the 5th game we have on the docket this week, which in years past would probably be either the 1 or 2, the marquee game of the weekend. Bengals at Bills. You covered it a little bit ago. I think a lot of people are really starting to get on the Bengals bandwagon. And if they were somehow able to beat the Bills this weekend, that would be amplified 10,000%. So how do you see this game going this weekend? Bills aren't really in a position where they can drop many games either.
No, it's the 3rd meeting between Joe Burrow and Josh Allen. And Joe Burrow has beaten Josh Allen twice. So Josh Allen has not been able to get past Joe Burrow. And look, this is a huge game for the Bengals in the sense that if they win this game, and they will have in back-to-back weeks beaten Baltimore and Buffalo, that's a statement. And if we go back to last year, Cincinnati got rolling at the end of the year. And it just feels like they're on a similar trajectory this year. Now, again, Buffalo's been able to run the football pretty well. They trailed last week 7-3 against the Steelers and then came out and ran the ball. James Cook had a career-high 32 carries. The Cincinnati Bengals, if they're going to win this game, are going to have to run the football with Chase Brown because Buffalo's run defense has been vulnerable all season long, and Chase Brown has been very, very good lately. Samaje Perine's come back. They've got something of a 1-2 combination. We'll see if they could run the football, but I just feel like if the Bengals find a way to beat Buffalo, first of all, the division race in the AFC East will be over if it's not already. And people will be asking what's wrong with the Bills. And people will be talking about the Bengals making that unlikely surge for a second straight year and whether it can be enough. Credit to Joe Burrow for coming back. Like, a lot of people thought he wouldn't be back at all this season. Not only did he come back, but he led the Bengals to a win on Thanksgiving night, and they looked like a different team. There's a certain swag and aura that guy provides to everybody who's out there. It just feels like everybody is more confident when Joe Burrow is playing quarterback again, as he'll be doing Sunday against the Buffalo Bills.
Yeah, it's one of those things where when he's coming out and he's playing, you have a legitimate chance to win. You feel like you can beat anybody, whereas I understand, Joe Flacco, Jake Browning, it's an NFL team. Those guys are NFL players. But like you said, this guy almost won the MVP last year. So, and I understand, like, they do need to run the ball, but I feel like that's what happens with the Bengals, and because they have Joe Burrow, if it doesn't work early, they kind of just get enamored with, hey, let's just chuck it and let's outscore these guys. And with a healthy Joe Burrow, like that is absolutely in play. I mean, I know that the Bills absolutely dominated the Steelers last week, but they had a defensive touchdown. It was 7-3 at the end of the first half. I wouldn't say their offense, obviously, when a team can't stop the run at all, you can kind of just run it down their throat and you don't really need to do anything else. But we'll see. This also, I feel like this could be one of those games where whoever plays better at quarterback is going to win. I just, both of these guys understand the magnitude of this matchup, and I think they're both going to want to put on a show.
Ty, we talk about the Bengals having to run the table. It's not like Joe Burrow hasn't been in this position before. And if we go back to 2021, from weeks 14 to weeks 18, since 2021, Joe Burrow has won 12 straight games. 12 straight games from weeks 14 to 18 since 2021. So this guy, at this time of the year, has been money. And they need him to be money again this week and money again the rest of the season. And if he is, the Bengals could do the unthinkable and somehow make it to the postseason.
Yeah, and if they can get through the Bills and then the Ravens next week, they finish with Dolphins, Cardinals, and Browns, which are definitely 3 winnable games. I understand it's the NFL, anything can happen. But, yeah, you'd be hard-pressed to find a team who probably doesn't feel like they're playing with house money more than the Bengals right now, especially with Joe Burrow coming back. So that is going to be I'm very excited for that one as well, and that's an early window game, I believe. So I like that these are kind of sprinkled throughout the day. All right, Schefter, let's get to the 6th and final big matchup of the weekend. Monday Night Football, Eagles at Chargers. Boy, I'll tell you what, the Eagles, I don't know if you saw on Hard Knocks, the in-season with the NFC East, but someone said, I don't know which, it was a coach said to Nick Sirianni, like, hey, I don't know if you've heard, but the sky is falling. And he just, he said, yep, I have heard. And then it goes right into the cold open. So they understand. I mean, the Eagles, it just hasn't felt right all year. And then, we talked about how good their defense is, obviously. And then for them to yield 280 plus rush yards to the Bears in a national spotlight game when they're the only teams playing, that wasn't great. And then on the flip side, do we have any idea what the status of Justin Herbert will be?
Well, I think everything starts there. And I think here's where we are today, Thursday morning, going into Monday night. He had surgery Monday on a broken bone in his fractured left hand. He came out and played the game Sunday and finished up. Now, they obviously will be in a different situation coming out of surgery. Justin Herbert has said he's preparing as if he is going to play on Monday night. The Chargers head coach Jim Harbaugh has said they're getting him ready to play on Monday night. And Justin Herbert I think, has an excellent chance to play based on what the Chargers publicly have been saying this week. But I'm going to also say there's this other school of thought that's out there. I've spoken to some people this week who have said to me the Chargers trainers and doctors won't let him go out there on Monday night, having had surgery on his left hand on Monday, and play a week later. Now, I don't know which one is right. I don't know whether I'm buying what Jim Harbaugh and Justin Herbert are saying, or whether they're engaging in sportsmanship, or whether these other people who are right. There are trainers and doctors who have said to me this week, they're not going to let him go out there on Monday night after the surgery. And I thought, well, that's interesting. They let him go out there on Sunday after he broke his hip, but now he's had surgery, and you can't risk that after you've had the surgery. Now, again, I'm not a doctor. My name is not Neil Elatrosh, okay? So I don't know exactly what to make of this. All I'm telling you is that there are two different schools of thought here. There's the one that's emanating out of the Chargers organization that the guy looks like he's going to play. And there's the idea that has emanated outside where people have wondered whether they're going to let him play, having had surgery on that hand Monday, essentially 1 week before they're scheduled to take on the Eagles. Now, here's the other part that's interesting. It certainly sounds like Amari Hampton is going to be back on Monday night for the first time in weeks after fracturing his ankle. And by the way, he fractured his ankle, and you didn't hear very much about that from the Chargers organization. People knew that it was something significant. We knew it was bad, but we didn't know his ankle was fractured until he came out and said it last week. So it's not like we're living in a fully transparent world, although I will say this, to their credit, the Chargers have been incredible this year. As soon as they lost Rashawn Slater in the preseason, literally a few hours later, they came out and announced he tore his patella tendon, his season's over, he needs surgery. Incredible. Justin Herbert, after the game or Monday, fractured his left hand, needs surgery, he's going to be day-to-day. Now that I applaud them, and I wish more teams would be like this. What's the difference? Everybody is sniffing around. Everybody's digging in. Everybody's asking about the injuries. Put it out. Stop the speculation, and let's move on with the reality of it. But now my question is it what the Chargers are saying where he's going to play on Monday night? Or is it what these other doctors and trainers have suggested to me they can't let him play on Monday night? And I don't know the answer there.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where, I mean, I could be wrong, but, you know, the Eagles are probably preparing no matter what the Justin Herbert is going to play. Yeah, you know, so it's like, does it even really matter? If he doesn't play, then on the fly, it's okay, hey, we'll prepare for Taylor Heineke or whoever their backup is. Trey Lance, exactly, okay.
Well, if he doesn't play, okay, with all due respect, I have a hard time imagining Trey Lance beating the Eagles on Monday night. And if he proves me wrong, he proves me wrong. But I don't see that happening.
Yeah, I agree. And that's why this is such a tough situation, because a broken hand for a quarterback, even if it's your non-throwing hand, like that's a big deal. I mean, we kind of saw how much difficulty Aaron Rodgers had with a couple broken bones in his wrist and having the cast on there. It's just completely different. But the Chargers they're still very much in the thick of the, you know, so it's like if let's say Justin Herbert has a broken hand and they say, okay, you know what, we got to sit you 2 weeks. Are you thinking that the Chargers are going to make the playoffs? And even when he does come back, his hand's still broken. It's not going to heal overnight.
If he misses multiple weeks, they're not going to be able to survive that, and they're not going to be able to make it to the postseason, I don't think.
Exactly. I agree. And we know what kind of gamer he is, how competitive he is.
Yes, he's so tough.
Yeah.
So tough. And that's why when I think about it in the end, my guess is that he does play. My guess is I'm going to believe the Chargers because they have been fairly transparent. And I understand the skepticism from medical professionals as to why Justin Herbert couldn't and shouldn't and wouldn't be out there on Monday night. But ultimately, it's football, and these players are crazy. Yeah. They do unbelievable things with great courage that I would never consider doing, okay? So with Justin Herbert's history, my guess is he's out there on Monday night, but let's see how the week plays out.
Yeah, I think he's going to try to go no matter what. So I think we'll see him start the game, And then who knows if the first couple series, it's just like, man, he really can't do this. And we probably should protect him from himself. But again, how do you weigh that when it's like, listen, we need to win all these games. We want to make the playoffs. So I understand. And then on the flip side, Schefty, with the Eagles, if let's say they win this game, do you think that's like a get right position for them? Or is there just too much drama, too much chaos, I guess, surrounding the Eagles? Like, how do you feel about them going forward?
Well, here's what I would say. As we tape this on Thursday morning, if the Detroit Lions win on Thursday night, the Eagles are making the postseason. They're winning the division. It's not really much of an issue, and they have a few weeks to figure it out. If the Dallas Cowboys win on Thursday night, the pressure is on the Eagles Monday night and going forward because the Dallas Cowboys are here to stay. Again, people may be hearing this podcast on Friday or Saturday or Sunday morning, and if they are, you know the outcome here by now. But if the Cowboys win on Thursday night in Detroit, the alarm bells should be sounding from Detroit to Philadelphia because the Cowboys are coming. If they don't, then the Eagles here are in a nice position and have the rest of the season to figure out all the things that have gone wrong and to get it right to try to defend their Super Bowl championship.
And, I guess they have the Bills again late, but then they have the Raiders and the Commanders twice. So if there's a remaining schedule where you feel like you could potentially kind of right the ship and get it going in the right direction before the playoffs start, they certainly have, a little bit more favorable of a schedule than a lot of these other teams do. But I don't know. It just nothing feels right. And I feel like mojo and all that kind of stuff is so important when we get to this time of the year.
Right.
So I don't know. That again, I don't want to say that's a de facto playoff game, but we'll know a lot more about the Eagles and the Chargers and where they're going to go after Monday night finish.
By the way, the teams heading into this significant weekend with the mojo, that's been the Jaguars. That's been the Bears. That's been who else in the games? The Cowboys.
Cowboys, yep.
I mean, there's some teams with some real mojo, but mojo is fleeting, and mojo in this league can be a week-to-week thing. But we have a great Week 14 upon us. Great job today, Ty. Looking ahead to some tremendous matchups. Great job by our producers and social team, Dan Stanzik, Rob Lorenzo, and thank you to all the listeners for tuning into another Adam Schefter podcast. Please remember to rate, review, and subscribe to the Adam Schefter podcast. We'll be back in this spot Tuesday to look back at these games and to look ahead to the next significant slate of NFL matchups in Week 15. Until then, everybody, enjoy the games this weekend.